The Air Force today fired the two-star general in charge of its nuclear missiles for undisclosed personal misbehavior and a, quote, loss of trust. This is the second firing of a senior commander of our nuclear forces this week. Major General Michael Carey, removed from command of the 20th Air Force. Carey was responsible for 3 wings of intercontinental ballistic missiles, a total of 450 missiles at 3 bases across the country. A Pentagon official was asked whether Carey's dismissal was alcohol-related. He didn't respond directly, but said Carey is not an alcoholic. Our next guest says there is an unprecedented epidemic of bad judgment and self-indulgence concerning military brass. Joining us is Fox News strategic analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters. Great to have you with us. Ralph, I mean, this is stunning. First, 3 stars, now 2 stars, and all in the nuclear command.
Yeah, and we've had 4 stars essentially relieved, more 2 stars court-martialed, reduced in rank, put out of the Army, and there is a real problem. Now, Lou, you know history, and there have always been problem generals, but not in this density, this number, and especially we're having them relieved for not just sexual peccadillos and affairs, but for sexual abuse of subordinates, for abusing their position, wasting money. The list goes on. And, of course, we all know the Petraeus story and everything else. And I really have seen these guys in action, and there are certainly very many honorable and good ones. But this problem, this epidemic, I think stems from the imperial trappings that surround today's senior generals and admirals. It's amazing how insulated they are, not merely with levels of security, but the aides and cooks. I mean, General George Marshall cut his own grass out of his home in Leesburg. And now generals and admirals have dogs' bodies to do everything for them. And it's not just a question of their, I sort of think of them as the senior members of the entitlement class now. Right. But beyond that, there's a real disconnect with our troops. And in Afghanistan, Lou, I have never seen the kind of dangerous and profound disconnect that I see between these generals who, stay in Kabul behind layers of security, surrounded by electronic toys, once in a while fly down range in a fleet of helicopters, pin a medal on a soldier, have tea with a village elder we bought, and fly back to their compound. And the difference between their perception of what's going on in that war and the perception I get from the soldiers and Marines on the ground, the enlisted men and the junior officers, I've never seen a greater gap. We've now got chateau generals.
Let me ask you this, because the war seems to be shaping the command structure, seems to be shaping those generals. It's a different kind of war. It is a long war. It is not about generals who are brilliantly creating strategies and moving forces, their troops, into position and destroying the enemy. We are engaged in abstractions. We are engaged in what, frankly, I see as nothing but a process rather than an effort to win a victory. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I certainly agree at the strategic level. But down at the grunt level, for those soldiers and Marines...
No, I'm only talking about generals.
Yeah, well, the generals, it is, but, no matter what kind of war you're in, the generals have to get down and see what it's like. They have to experience a little bit of what the troops go through. And for instance, General Allen, the former commander in Afghanistan, every time Marine commander, and a Marine of all things, whenever something would go wrong, he would violate a basic rule of leadership and blame the troops. Remember always saying, oh, the troops have to behave better, the troops have to learn to respect Afghan culture. And those soldiers and Marines are out there, the epidemic pederasty, the abuse of women, the corruption, the treachery, the filth, and they're wondering, what in the world am I supposed to respect? And I have to say that General Stanley McChrystal, whatever faults he may have had as a strategic leader, he is one man who did get out with the troops. And if you don't get out with the troops and get dirty, you won't know what's going on. And Lou, here's something to think about. In 12 years of being at war in multiple wars, we have not had a single general officer casualty.
That is telling, as you said, about history. The idea that going on 13 years in Afghanistan itself in the early 9 months of following September 11th was under the control of our covert forces, the CIA and other covert forces. We have messed that up to such a fare thee well that it almost goes without notice, it almost goes without discussion, and we hear the ever clever fellows, and they are usually fellows, talking about how brilliant the long war strategy is. Would you not say it's time for our academies to change their ways and for the generals who make up the command structure to start talking honestly about why they failed to succeed in Afghanistan and in other efforts, and how disappointing it is to all Americans that our troops have been so poorly led?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, and I do agree. But political correctness has seeped so deeply into the academies, above all, and into the command structure. Generals don't take a stand on anything anymore. And it's really pathetic. I mean, we've seen this counterinsurgency, the ballyhooed, beloved of the New York Times counterinsurgency strategy, fail miserably. And no general will admit that it's failed. And by the way, another point about Afghanistan, you're absolutely right. We should have been out of there in the spring of 2002. We're still there. And 3/4 are dead, died on Obama's watch, and the left says nothing.